The hot wind blew across the orange sands as Dr. Hannah Kim stepped carefully down the ramp of the research ship. The desert planet orbiting Ta City looked just like pictures of old Earth deserts, with endless dunes stretching to the horizon. The two suns overhead made the air shimmer with heat, even through her protective suit. Temperature is 43 degrees Celsius, Hannah said into her recorder. Wind speed moderate. Sand composition similar to Earth's Sahara region, but with higher silicon content. She adjusted her sample collection kit and began walking toward a rocky outcrop about 50 meters away. As the lead botanist on the expedition, Hannah was looking for any signs of plant life that could survive in these harsh conditions. The Stellar Exploration Committee had sent their team to catalog all life forms on the newly discovered planet they called Dune Prime. Hannah knelt beside a small cluster of what looked like dried twigs poking from the sand. She carefully brushed away the top layer of sand with her tool. That's when she noticed something moving. "What's this?" she whispered, leaning closer. A slender, segmented organism about 20 centimeters long wriggled up from the sand. It was golden brown with ridges along its tubular body. Hannah held perfectly still as the creature rose up like a cobra, seeming to sense her presence. "Subject appears to be some kind of desert-dwelling invertebrate," she recorded, her voice betraying her excitement. "Resembles annelid life forms from Earth, but with a hard exoskeleton." She slowly moved her hand toward her sample container, but the warm light creature suddenly darted forward. Hannah gasped and fell backward. But instead of attacking, the organism merely moved closer to her gloved hand, almost like it was curious. "It seems attracted to me," she said, watching as the creature nudged against her glove. When she moved her hand, it followed, possibly responding to my body's electrical field through the suit. For the next hour, Hannah observed the strange worm. It never strayed more than a meter from her. When she collected her samples and prepared to return to the ship, the creature followed her, gliding over the sand like a tiny snake. "I can't just leave it here," she decided, carefully scooping it into a specimen container. The worm didn't resist. Back on the research ship, Hannah placed the container in the secure biology lab. Her colleague Dr. Jun Park looked up from his microscope. "What did you find?" he asked, eyes widening at the sight of the strange creature. "I'm not sure yet," Hannah replied, "but it seems to have formed some kind of attachment to me." June laughed. "Like a pet. The commander won't be happy if you're bringing home strays." Over the next 3 days, Hannah ran tests on the organism she now called Sandy. She discovered it had no eyes, but could sense electrical fields, heat, and vibrations. It ate tiny amounts of minerals from the sand and seemed to absorb moisture from the air. The strange thing was that Sandy kept escaping its container. No matter how securely Hannah sealed it, she would enter the lab to find the container empty. Then Sandy would appear, often slithering out from under a cabinet or behind equipment. Always, it moved toward Hannah. "It's like it's imprinted on me," she told June. "Like baby birds that think the first thing they see is their mother. Or maybe it thinks you're food," June suggested, keeping his distance. After the 4th escape, Hannah gave up trying to confine Sandy. "I'll just keep it with me until we figure out what to do," she decided, creating a small container with air holes that she clipped to her belt. On the morning of the 7th day, Commander Sun called a briefing for all science officers. Hannah hurried to the meeting room, her equipment bag slung over her shoulder. Sandy was inside, as it had taken to hiding in her bag instead of its container. As Hannah listened to the commander's update on their mission schedule, she didn't notice Sandy poking its head out of her bag. The worm slithered partway out, hanging down alongside Hannah's leg. Dr. Min Song, the ship's xenobiologist, happened to glance down. His coffee mug crashed to the floor as he jumped to his feet. "Human, why do you have a mini sandworm from Arrakis between your legs?" he shouted, pointing at the creature. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Hannah, and then down to the worm-like creature hanging from her bag. Commander Sun's face turned red. "Dr. Kim, explain yourself immediately." Hannah quickly scooped Sandy back into her bag. "It's not what you think, Commander," she said, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "This is a life form I discovered in the desert. It's formed some kind of bond with me and keeps escaping containment. It looks exactly like the sandworms from those old Earth stories," Dr. Song said. "The ones that lived on the desert planet Arrakis." "Well, it's not fictional," Hannah replied, opening her bag to let everyone see Sandy. "It's a real organism with some remarkable properties." She explained how Sandy could detect electrical fields and seemed able to survive with very little water or food. "And most interestingly," she continued, growing more confident as she spoke about her discovery, "it produces a strange enzyme that breaks down toxins in the sand. I think it might be cleaning its environment." Commander Sun frowned. "Dr. Kim, you know all specimens are supposed to remain in the lab." "I tried, Commander. It kept escaping to find me. I think there's something about human bioelectric fields that attracts it." As if to prove her point, Sandy slithered out of the bag again and wrapped itself gently around Hannah's wrist like a bracelet. Dr. Song approached cautiously. "May I?" he asked, extending his hand. Sandy immediately retreated back to Hannah when Song got close. "It only likes me," Hannah said with a small smile. "I think we've made first contact with a species that naturally bonds with humans. Think of what we could learn from each other." Commander Sun sighed. "Very well, Dr. Kim. You may continue your research with this, Sandy, but you're responsible for it. And if it turns out to be dangerous—" "It won't be," Hannah said confidently, looking down at the golden-brown creature. "I think this is just the beginning of something amazing." The days after the meeting blurred together as Hannah's little discovery became the research station's most interesting project. Scientists from different teams took turns studying the worm-like creature. They officially named it Dune, after an old Earth story about giant sandworms. "Look at these readings," Dr. Jaiho said one morning, pointing to his screen. Hannah leaned over to see complex chemical formulas flashing. "Dune produces an enzyme I've never seen before. It breaks down toxic compounds in minutes." Hannah nodded, watching Dune curl around her wrist. "That explains why it survived on a planet full of silicon dust that would kill most creatures." They ran more tests. The enzyme could clean air, water, and even some metals. It worked best when Dune was calm and felt safe. "The enzyme production doubles when it's near you," Jaiho observed. "Your presence seems to trigger its protective response." Hannah smiled, gently stroking Dune's smooth segments. "We've bonded, I think." Commander Sun was less excited. "It can't keep riding around in your pocket, Dr. Kim. We need proper containment protocols." "Dune escapes every container we put it in," Hannah argued. "And it gets stressed when separated from me, which reduces enzyme production." After much debate, they reached a compromise. Hannah would create a special carrying pouch that would keep Dune safe while allowing it to remain with her. She spent 3 days designing it, using soft fabric lined with sensors to monitor Dune's health. The finished pouch attached to her belt. It had a clear panel so Dune could see out, breathing holes, and a secure closure that even the clever worm couldn't escape. Dune seemed content in its new home, especially since it could still feel Hannah's bioelectric field nearby. "You look like you're carrying a fancy water bottle," June teased when he saw the pouch. "Better than having a mini sandworm between my legs, as Dr. Song so eloquently put it," Hannah replied with a laugh. Life on the research station settled into a routine. Scientists studied Dune's remarkable abilities while Hannah continued her botanical research. Dune's enzyme became a focus of interest, with potential applications for cleaning toxic environments. 3 weeks after Dune's discovery, disaster struck. Hannah was in the botany lab when the lights flickered. Red emergency lights flashed on as the station's AI announced, "Warning, solar flare detected. Radiation shields activated." The crew had drilled for this. Everyone moved calmly to their safety stations. Hannah grabbed her research samples and Dune's pouch before heading to the central hub. Commander Sun's voice came over the speakers. All personnel report status. One by one, department heads checked in. Everything seemed under control until the environmental systems officer spoke. Sir, the radiation damaged the life support systems in Section C. Air filtration is failing. Toxin levels rising. Silence fell across the room. Section C housed the main living quarters. Without air filtration, the recycled air would quickly become poisonous. Evacuation procedures for Section C, Commander Sun ordered. How long until repairs? At least 12 hours, sir. Hannah felt Dune moving restlessly in its pouch. When she checked, the worm was producing more enzyme than usual, creating a gel-like substance along its body. An idea struck her. Commander, she said, stepping forward. Dune's enzyme breaks down toxins. Maybe it can help filter the air until repairs are complete. Sun frowned. That tiny creature can't clean an entire section's air. Not alone, Hannah agreed. But if we extract the enzyme and introduce it into the ventilation system, it might reduce the toxins enough to buy us time. With no better options, the commander approved her plan. The science team worked frantically to extract and replicate the enzyme. Hannah kept Dune close, as it produced more enzyme when near her. 6 hours later, Environmental Officer Park checked the readings again. It's working. Toxin levels are down 60%. We can safely continue repairs now. Dune had saved the station. Even Commander Sun had to admit it. 2 days later, when things had returned to normal, a new challenge arrived. The research station welcomed its first alien visitors, a delegation from the Stellar Collective, coming to evaluate Earth's scientific progress. The 3 aliens had blue-gray skin and large, intelligent eyes. They moved with deliberate grace as Commander Sun led them through the station. Hannah was asked to present her botanical findings, but the aliens seemed more interested in Dune. Your companion organism, said Chief Scientist Zyle, the leader of the delegation. You allow it to remain with you at all times. Yes, Hannah replied. We formed a bond that benefits both of us. The aliens exchanged looks of confusion. You did not sequence its entire genome before establishing physical contact, asked Zyle. We couldn't. Dune's biology is too complex for quick analysis, and it refused to stay away from me. Chief Scientist Zill's eyes widened. So you permitted an unclassified life form to make physical contact without knowing if it carried pathogens or toxins. We took precautions, Commander Sun interjected. Dr. Kim wore protective gear during initial contact. But now she carries it openly, said another alien, pointing to the pouch at Hannah's side. This creature could be storing harmful compounds or developing mutations to better exploit its host. Hannah smiled. Dune isn't exploiting me. We formed a symbiotic relationship. It feels safe with me, and in return, it produces enzymes that can clean toxins. Those enzymes saved our station during the solar flare emergency. The aliens still looked troubled. Chief Scientist Zyle stepped closer to examine Dune through the clear panel. In over 300 years of interspecies contact, we have never permitted unclassified organisms such freedom. The risks are too great. Humans have always formed relationships with other species, Hannah explained. On Earth, we domesticated animals thousands of years ago. We've always been willing to connect with other life forms. This willingness to form bonds without complete information. Zale paused, searching for words. It is either great foolishness or great wisdom. I cannot decide which. Commander Sun smiled diplomatically. Perhaps a bit of both, Chief Scientist. But in this case, that human tendency saved our station and our lives. Dune poked its head out of the pouch, seeming to study the aliens with curiosity. The aliens stepped back, still uneasy. Remarkable, Zyle said finally. Most species in the galaxy would destroy an unknown organism out of caution. You humans choose connection instead. Hannah gently stroked Dune's head. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from taking a chance on connection, rather than choosing fear. 3 months after the solar flare incident, Hannah received unexpected news. The Stellar Collective had invited her to speak at the Central System Diplomatic Summit about Dune and human-alien symbiosis. It was a great honor and a great responsibility. They want me to explain why humans form bonds with other species, Hannah told Commander Sun. The collective is still puzzled by our relationship with Dune. Commander Sun nodded. This could improve Earth's standing among the spacefaring civilizations. But be careful, these diplomatic events can be tricky. 2 weeks later, Hannah found herself standing in the grand hall of the collective's space station. The room was massive, with tall crystal windows showing the stars outside. 37 different alien species had sent representatives. Some looked almost human. Others were so different that Hannah couldn't tell which part was their face. The Earth delegation sat near the front, led by Ambassador Kang. He had briefed Hannah thoroughly before her speech. Remember, some species find our habit of bonding with animals disturbing, he had warned. Be respectful but firm about our ways. Now, as Hannah approached the speaking platform, she felt her heart beating fast. Dune's special pouch was secured at her side. The worm had been unusually active all day, perhaps sensing her nervousness. The moderator, a tall blue-skinned alien, introduced her. We welcome Dr. Hannah Kim of Earth, who will speak about the unusual human practice of forming relationships with non-sentient species. Hannah took a deep breath and began. Thank you for this opportunity. As you know, 3 months ago, I discovered a worm-like organism we call Dune. Instead of keeping it in a lab, I formed a bond with it. This might seem strange to many of you, but for humans, it's natural. She could see the alien delegates watching her with different expressions. Some looked curious, others suspicious. Humans have a history of forming bonds with other species, she continued. From Earth's ancient canine's toe. A sudden gasp interrupted her. Several delegates from the Proximan section were pointing at something. Hannah looked down and felt her stomach drop. Dune had somehow opened its pouch and slithered out while she was speaking. Even worse, it had moved across the platform to a decorative plant arrangement and was now eating one of the flowers. Not just any flower, a tall, shimmering blue bloom that stood at the center of the arrangement. The Proximan ambassador rose from his seat, his 4 arms raised in alarm. He was normally light purple, but his skin had darkened to almost black with emotion. This is outrageous, he bellowed, his voice booming through the hall. The human brings a wild creature to consume our sacred eternity bloom. Hannah rushed to retrieve Dune, who had already eaten half the flower. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. That bloom was brought from our home world. The ambassador continued. It takes 50 years to grow and only blooms once. It represents the eternal nature of peace among our worlds. The hall erupted in chatter. Some delegates looked angry, others amused. The Earth delegation looked horrified. Suwa Kim, Earth's diplomatic attaché, quickly stepped forward. She was young, but had a reputation for handling difficult situations. Ambassador, please accept our deepest apologies, Suwa said, bowing deeply to the Proximan delegation. Dr. Kim meant no disrespect. In human culture, forming relationships with other species is deeply valued. We call them companions or pets. This seemed to make things worse. The representative from Alpha Centauri stood up, their green exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. Their mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You trivialize sentience by keeping lesser beings as possessions, the Centaurian asked, mandibles clicking in disgust. This explains much about human behavior. Hannah held Dune close, feeling the situation spinning out of control. The worm seemed unaware of the trouble it had caused, contentedly digesting the sacred flower. Ambassador Kang stepped in. Perhaps I can clarify. Humans do not view other species as possessions. We see them as partners in life. Our history is filled with stories of humans and animals helping each other survive. The Proximan ambassador was not appeased. Your partner has destroyed a priceless cultural artifact. This is why unclassified organisms should remain in containment facilities. Hannah knew she had to act. She stepped forward again, holding Dune carefully. "I take full responsibility," she said clearly. "Dune is under my care, and I failed to secure its pouch properly. But please understand, Dune isn't just a pet. It saved our research station during a crisis. The enzyme it produces can clean toxins from air and water." She gently placed Dune on the podium where everyone could see it. The worm curled into a spiral, its segments slowly pulsing. "On Earth, we have a saying, judge not just the mistake, but the whole being. Dune made a mistake today, or rather, I did by not watching it more carefully. But Dune has also done much good." The hall grew quieter as she continued. "The connection between different species can lead to amazing discoveries. Yes, it comes with risks. Yes, misunderstandings happen. But giving up on connection means giving up on learning from each other." Dune chose that moment to produce some of its enzyme, creating a small puddle of clear liquid on the podium. The liquid touched the remains of the eternity bloom, and to everyone's surprise, the broken stem began to change. The enzyme was somehow reacting with the plant. The Proximan scientists rushed forward with their instruments. "Impossible," one whispered. "The cellular degradation is reversing. The bloom might regrow." The Proximan ambassador looked stunned. In 3,000 years, no one has found a way to regenerate an eternity bloom once damaged. Hannah hadn't known Dune could do this. It seems Dune's enzyme doesn't just clean toxins. It can repair certain types of cellular damage. The mood in the hall shifted. What had been a diplomatic disaster was becoming a moment of scientific wonder. The Proximans huddled around their precious plant, now showing signs of new growth. Ambassador Kang gave Hannah a small smile. "It seems your little friend has a talent for both creating and solving problems." Hannah carefully returned Dune to its pouch, making sure it was securely closed this time. "Perhaps this incident, while regrettable, demonstrates something important," she said to the assembly. "Different species working together can accomplish things neither could alone, even when we make mistakes along the way." The Central System Diplomatic Summit would continue for 3 more days. There would be many more discussions about human-alien relations and the ethics of interspecies bonds. But something had changed. The delegates now looked at Dune, and at humans with new eyes. Not just as strange or reckless beings, but as creatures who might have something valuable to teach about connection across differences. The diplomatic summit continued for another 2 days after the Eternity Bloom incident. Things had calmed down considerably, especially after the Proximans discovered that Dune's enzyme might save their sacred plant. Many delegates who had been suspicious now wanted to learn more about the strange worm-like creature and its bond with Hannah. On the final day, delegates gathered for closing ceremonies in the Great Hall. Representatives from all 37 civilizations were present, dressed in their formal attire. Even the Proximan ambassadors seemed at peace, watching the regenerating Eternity Bloom that now sat in a special container filled with Dune's enzyme solution. Hannah stood with the Earth delegation, Dune resting quietly in its pouch. She had double-checked the fasteners this morning to prevent any more diplomatic incidents. The worm had been unusually still all day, which Hannah found strange but not concerning. As the collective overseer began his closing address, Hannah felt Dune start to move. At first, it was just gentle shifting, but then the movement became more frantic. Dune was thrashing inside its pouch, bumping against the sides. "What's wrong?" Hannah whispered, trying not to disturb the ceremony. She opened the top of the pouch slightly to check on her companion. To her surprise, Dune was vibrating rapidly, creating a high-pitched sound that she had never heard before. The noise was faint but unmistakable, like a tiny alarm bell ringing. Before Hannah could figure out what was happening, the doors to the Great Hall burst open. Dr. Q. Park, the expedition's geologist who had joined the Earth delegation, ran into the room. His face was pale, and he held a data tablet that flashed red warnings. "Hannah," he shouted, ignoring the startled delegates and the overseer's interrupted speech. "The seismic readings, they're off the charts. The room erupted in confusion. The collective overseer tried to restore order, but Q rushed to the central platform. The station's sensors have detected massive tectonic movement on the planet below, he explained breathlessly. A major earthquake is forming. The epicenter is directly beneath this section of the orbital station. Hannah looked down at her pouch. Doom was still vibrating and making that strange sound. Suddenly, she understood. Doom knew, she said, her voice growing stronger with certainty. It's been trying to warn us. Ambassador Kang looked skeptical. Dr. Kim, how could a worm possibly? It knew about the toxins in our station before our sensors detected them, Hannah interrupted. It's sensitive to vibrations and electromagnetic fields. It must have felt the early seismic waves. The collective security chief approached. Our sensors show nothing yet. We can't evacuate based on. Doom's vibrations grew more intense. The high-pitched sound became loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The worm was thrashing so violently that the pouch shook at Hannah's side. Hannah made a decision. She stepped onto the platform beside Q. Everyone needs to evacuate. Now, she shouted over the growing noise of confused delegates. Doom is warning us. We don't have much time. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ambassador Kang stood up. All Earth personnel, follow evacuation protocol immediately, he ordered. The Proximan ambassador, looking at the now wildly shaking pouch, stood as well. Proximan delegation, we will evacuate as well. One by one, other leaders made the same call. Security personnel began directing people toward the emergency shuttles. Some delegates grumbled about the interruption, but most moved quickly, sensing the urgency. 17 minutes later, with the evacuation nearly complete, the first tremors began. Hannah felt the floor beneath her feet vibrate as she helped guide the last group to the shuttles. The space station structure groaned as the gravitational anchors strained against the shifting planetary crust below. From the safety of the emergency observation deck on the station's upper level, they watched as sections of the lower station buckled under the stress. The Great Hall, where they had all been gathered just minutes before, collapsed as support beams failed. The entire southern continent is experiencing a level 9 tectonic event, Q said, checking his instruments. If we had been in those rooms. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The Proximan ambassador approached Hannah, his forearms held in a position of respect. The worm knew, he whispered, his voice filled with awe. It sensed the danger before our most advanced technology. Hannah nodded, gently stroking Doom through the pouch. The worm had finally calmed now that they were safe. The ambassador's skin rippled with changing colors, a sign of deep emotion among his species. This reminds me of ancient records in our archives. They speak of the Gizia, a civilization that created biological warning systems before their extinction. This creature must be their legacy. Gizia? Hannah asked. I've never heard of them. Few have, the ambassador replied. They vanished over 50,000 years ago. They were master bioengineers who created living tools rather than mechanical ones. Q had been listening to their conversation while working on his tablet. His eyes suddenly widened. Hannah, remember those strange ruins we found near where you discovered Dune? I've been analyzing the data we collected. He turned his tablet to show them complex charts and images. The desert planet where we found Dune shows evidence of an advanced civilization that vanished approximately 50,000 years ago. Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. You think Dune was created by them, engineered. It would explain its unusual abilities. Q said, the sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, the enzyme production, the warning behavior, these aren't random evolutionary traits. They're too specific, too purposeful. The Proximan ambassador's color shifted to deep blue, the shade of revelation among his people. The Gizia records say they created creatures to bond with sentient beings, to protect them from environmental dangers. They must have engineered these creatures as symbiotic partners. Hannah looked down at the pouch where Dune now rested peacefully. So Dune isn't just an animal that happened to bond with me. It was designed to find someone to bond with. It's been waiting in that desert for thousands of years for someone to come along. For you to come along, Q corrected gently. Around them, delegates from many worlds were talking excitedly. News of Dune's warning and the successful evacuation had spread quickly. What had been seen as a strange human habit, bonding with an unknown creature, was now being viewed in a new light. "We must learn more about these Gizia," said the Centauri representative, who had been so critical before. "And about these creatures they created. If more exist." "They'd probably do," Hannah said, thinking about the vast deserts of Dune Prime. "And they've been waiting a very long time for someone to find them." 1 year after the earthquake that nearly destroyed the diplomatic station, Hannah stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Research Center. The massive structure orbited Dune Prime, the desert planet where she had first discovered her worm companion. Through the window, she could see research ships coming and going as scientists from dozens of worlds studied the planet below. "Quite a change from when we first arrived," said Commander Sun, now promoted to Director of Interspecies Research. "Back then, we were just looking for desert plants." Hannah smiled, watching a team of researchers board a shuttle bound for the surface. "Now we're looking for more Gizia creations and learning about an ancient civilization." Dune peeked out from its special habitat pouch at Hannah's side. In the year since the earthquake, Hannah had designed a much better carrying system. The new pouch had monitoring equipment, feeding stations, and even a small communication system that could translate Dune's vibrations into basic alerts. "Ambassador Kim," a voice called from behind them. Hannah still wasn't used to her new title. After the earthquake incident, Earth's government had named her Ambassador for Interspecies Relations, a position created just for her. She turned to see a young scientist named Minho approaching with excitement on his face. "The expedition team found another one. That makes 17 so far." "Another Dune?" Hannah asked, her heart beating faster. "Yes, this one bonded with Dr. Yoon almost immediately. It's already producing the enzyme and responding to her bioelectric field." This was the news Hannah had been hoping for. Since learning that Dune was created by the ancient Gizia civilization, research teams had been searching the deserts of Dune Prime for more of the creatures. So far, they had found 16 others, each one slightly different, but with the same basic abilities. Most importantly, each one had formed a bond with a human researcher. "What's interesting," Minho continued, "is that this one seems specially attuned to radiation levels. Dr. Yoon thinks it might have been designed to warn about solar flares or cosmic radiation events." Hannah nodded. Each Dune they found seemed to have slightly different specialties. Some detected earthquakes, others chemical changes, and still others could sense electromagnetic disturbances. Together, they formed an amazing early warning network for all kinds of cosmic dangers. "The Centauri delegation wants to meet with you," Director Sun said. "They're finally ready to discuss creating their own symbiotic bonds with the creatures." This was another victory. For months, Hannah had been meeting with representatives from various alien civilizations, teaching them about forming relationships with other species. Many had been reluctant, believing that different life forms should be kept separate, with higher forms controlling lower ones. "I'll meet them this afternoon," Hannah said. "I think they'll be surprised by how rewarding a true symbiotic relationship can be." Later that day, Hannah stood before a group of Centauri scientists, their insect-like bodies gleaming under the conference room lights. Once among the most critical of human practices, they now listened eagerly as she explained the basics of forming bonds with other species. "The key is respect," Hannah told them. "You must see the other creature as a partner, not a tool or a pet. The Gizia understood this 50,000 years ago. Their creations don't serve us. They work with us." "And now?" Hannah asked. "Now we see that there is wisdom in connection. The earthquake that could have killed hundreds was prevented because of your bond with this small creature." The Centauri gestured toward Dune, who was watching from its pouch. "Perhaps our ancestors were wrong." This scene was repeating across the galaxy. Species that had once looked down on humanity's primitive habit of forming bonds with animals were now studying human history, learning about dogs, cats, horses, and other Earth species that had lived alongside humans for thousands of years. After the meeting, Hannah walked through the research center's main hall. The walls displayed images of the 17 dunes discovered so far, along with their human partners. Each pair was helping to protect the growing network of space stations and colonies from natural disasters. Jai-Ho joined her, carrying a data tablet. "The Proximan Council just approved funding for a symbiosis academy," he said. "They want you to help design the curriculum." Hannah laughed. "From diplomatic incident to educational consultant. That's quite a journey." "Your journey is just beginning," Jai-Ho replied. "Look at this." He showed her the tablet, displaying a map of nearby star systems. "We found signs of Gizya artifacts on 3 other planets. There could be more creatures waiting to be discovered, maybe with abilities we haven't even imagined." That evening, as Hannah prepared for bed in her quarters, she sat with Dune on her lap. The small creature had grown slightly larger over the past year, its golden-brown segments now forming a body almost 40 centimeters long. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said softly, stroking Dune's smooth surface. The worm vibrated gently in what Hannah had come to recognize as contentment. A message appeared on her room's display screen. It was from the Galactic Council, the highest governing body among the spacefaring civilizations. They had approved her proposal for the Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. Teams of humans and their Dune partners would be assigned to major settlements across the galaxy, creating a network of early warning systems for cosmic events. More importantly, these teams would teach other species about forming bonds across the boundaries of different life forms. The hierarchical thinking that had dominated galactic culture for thousands of years was beginning to change. Hannah thought back to that first day on the desert planet, when a small worm had followed her back to the ship. She couldn't have imagined then where that simple connection would lead. The Gizya were right, she told Dune as she prepared for sleep. Different species are stronger together than apart. Maybe that's humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not our technology or our science, but our willingness to connect, to adapt, to see partners where others see only lesser beings. Dune curled into a spiral on the special pad beside Hannah's bed, its segments pulsing softly with a gentle blue light, a sign of complete trust. Beyond the window, the stars seemed brighter somehow, full of new possibilities and connections waiting to be discovered.